Spanning humanity's long journey, certain individuals have risen to prominence not for their benevolent deeds or contributions to society, but for the darkness they cast over the world. Their actions have left indelible scars, shaping the course of nations and altering the lives of millions. This documentary delves deep into the lives of 10 such figures, leaders whose legacies are stained with infamy and whose names have become synonymous with terror, cruelty, and oppression. By exploring their stories in greater detail, we aim to understand the complexities of their characters, the contexts that allowed their rise, and the lasting impact they have had on humanity. Chapter 1. Attila the Hun. In the waning days of the Roman Empire, a formidable force emerged from the steppes of Central Asia, a nomadic confederation known as the Huns. At their helm was Attila, a leader whose name would become a byword for devastation and fear across Europe. Born around 406 AD into the ruling family of the Huns, Attila was groomed alongside his brother Bleda to inherit leadership. The Huns, once a scattered and fractious people, began to consolidate under the strong leadership of their uncles, Oktar and Rugila. Following the deaths of their uncles, Attila and Bleda assumed joint leadership around 434 AD. Together, they negotiated a treaty with the Eastern Roman Empire, securing tribute payments that bolstered their wealth and power. However, the alliance between the brothers was short-lived. In 445 AD, Attila became the sole ruler after Bleda's untimely and suspicious death, rumored to be orchestrated by Attila himself to eliminate any challenge to his authority. Under Attila's singular command, the Hunnic Empire expanded dramatically. He reorganized his forces, emphasizing discipline and mobility, which became hallmarks of the Hunnic military. Their mastery of horseback warfare, combined with their composite bows and innovative tactics, made them a nearly unstoppable force on the battlefield. Attila's campaigns against the Eastern Roman Empire were relentless. In 447 AD, he led a massive invasion into the Balkans, ravaging over 70 cities and pushing the empire to its knees. The Romans, unable to repel his advances, were forced into the Treaty of Margus, which doubled the tribute they paid to the Huns. But Attila's ambitions extended beyond mere wealth. He sought to carve out a legacy that would endure for generations. In 450 AD, an opportunity presented itself when Honoria, sister to Western Roman Emperor Valentinian III, sent Attila a plea for help to escape an unwanted marriage, along with her ring. Interpreting this as a marriage proposal, Attila demanded half of the Western Empire as dowry. When his claim was rejected, he used it as a pretext to invade Gaul. The ensuing campaign culminated in the Battle of the Catalonian Plains in 451 AD, one of the bloodiest confrontations of antiquity. Attila's forces clashed with a coalition of Romans and Visigoths, led by General Flavius Aetius. While the battle was tactically inconclusive, it halted Attila's advance into Western Europe, a rare setback for the Hunnic leader. Undeterred, Attila invaded Italy in 452 AD, sacking cities such as Aquileia, whose destruction was so complete that it reportedly vanished from maps. Panic gripped Rome, and Emperor Valentinian III sent an envoy led by Pope Leo I to negotiate. The details of their meeting remain shrouded in legend, but Attila withdrew his forces, possibly due to logistical challenges, disease among his troops, or the threat of Eastern Roman forces attacking his base. Attila's sudden death in 453 AD during his wedding feast to a princess named Ildiko marked the end of an era. Accounts suggest he suffered a severe nosebleed or ruptured blood vessel after excessive drinking, leading to his demise. Without his unifying presence, the Hunnic Empire fragmented as subject tribes rebelled, and his sons fought among themselves for control. Attila's legacy is complex. To the Romans, he was the scourge of God, a punishment for their moral decay. His campaigns significantly weakened both Eastern and Western Roman empires, accelerating their decline and paving the way for the rise of medieval European kingdoms. Yet, in some Eastern narratives, Attila is seen as a national hero, a unifier who challenged the might of Rome. His story serves as a testament to the transient nature of power and the lasting impact a single leader can have on the world stage. As we move forward, we leave behind the echoes of Attila's thundering hooves and enter the foreboding landscapes of medieval Eastern Europe, where another ruler would etch his name into the annals of infamy. Chapter 2. Vlad the Impaler. In the rugged mountains and dense forests of 15th-century Wallachia, a region nestled between Transylvania and the Danube River, a prince named Vlad III would become one of history's most notorious figures. Known posthumously as Vlad the Impaler, his moniker reflects the gruesome method of execution he employed against his enemies, earning him a place in the dark pantheon of infamous rulers. Born in 1431 in the fortress city of Sighisoara, Vlad was the second son of Vlad II Dracul, a member of the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order dedicated to defending Christianity against the Ottoman Turks. The name Dracul means dragon in Romanian, and Dracula translates to son of the dragon, a title young Vlad would carry throughout his life. In 1442, Vlad and his younger brother Radu were taken hostage by the Ottoman Empire as a means to secure their father's loyalty. During their captivity, Vlad was exposed to Ottoman culture, military tactics, and political machinations. While Radu adapted to life at the Ottoman court, even converting to Islam and earning the favor of Sultan Mehmed II, Vlad harbored resentment and a burning desire for vengeance. After his father's assassination in 1447, orchestrated by rival boyars, nobles, with possible Hungarian support, Vlad sought to reclaim his birthright. His first brief reign in 1448 was short-lived due to the volatile political landscape. It wasn't until 1456 that he secured his position as voivode, Prince of Wallachia, embarking on a reign that would be marked by ruthless measures to consolidate power and defend his principality from external threats. Vlad faced a fragmented Wallachia, rife with internal strife and under constant threat from the expanding Ottoman Empire. Determined to strengthen his rule, he implemented strict laws and harsh punishments to instill order. His most notorious method was impalement, a gruesome practice where victims were pierced with a long stake inserted through the body and erected vertically, leaving them to die slowly in agony. This method served multiple purposes. It was a brutal punishment for crimes such as theft, dishonesty, and treason, and it acted as a psychological deterrent against enemies. Stories abound of Vlad impaling thousands. Some accounts suggest up to 20,000 Ottoman prisoners during his defense of Wallachia. The most infamous tale describes a forest of impaled victims outside the city of Târgoviște, intended to horrify and repel invading Ottoman forces. Vlad's resistance against the Ottomans was fierce. In 1462, when Sultan Mehmed II launched a campaign to subdue Wallachia, Vlad employed scorched earth tactics, poisoning wells and destroying crops to hinder the Ottoman advance. He orchestrated the night attack at Târgoviște, a daring raid aiming to assassinate the Sultan. Although the attempt failed, it showcased Vlad's tactical audacity and commitment to defending his realm. However, his brutal methods alienated not only his enemies, but also potential allies. The Saxon merchants of Transylvania, with whom he had strained relations due to trade disputes and political tensions, circulated pamphlets depicting him as a bloodthirsty tyrant. These accounts, often embellished, spread throughout Europe, cementing his reputation as a cruel despot. In 1462, facing overwhelming Ottoman forces and betrayal from within, Vlad sought refuge with King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary, hoping for support. Instead, he was arrested and imprisoned for over a decade, during which time Wallachia fell under Ottoman influence and his brother Radu's rule. Released in 1475, Vlad regained the Wallachian throne with Hungarian support, but ruled for only a short period before meeting his demise. In 1476, he was killed in battle against the Ottomans. The exact circumstances of his death remain unclear, and his burial site is shrouded in mystery, adding to the legends surrounding his life. Vlad the Impaler's legacy is a paradox. In Romania, he is sometimes revered as a national hero, a staunch defender of his homeland against Ottoman encroachment, a ruler who sought justice and order in a tumultuous era. Conversely, in Western Europe, he became the embodiment of cruelty and monstrosity, largely due to the lurid tales spread by his enemies. Centuries later, Vlad's life would inspire Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula, intertwining his historical persona with the myth of the vampire. This fusion of fact and fiction has immortalized Vlad in popular culture, but it also obscures the historical realities of his reign. As we depart the shadowy realm of Vlad the Impaler, our journey takes us to the opulent yet tumultuous court of Imperial Russia, where a mystic's influence would hasten the downfall of a dynasty. Chapter 3. Grigori Rasputin. In the vast expanses of early 20th century Russia, a land teetering on the brink of revolution, emerged Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin, a peasant, mystic, and controversial figure whose involvement with the Romanov family would become a catalyst in the empire's collapse. Born in 1869 in the remote Siberian village of Pokrovskoye, Rasputin's early life was unremarkable, marked by limited education and traditional rural hardships. In his youth, Rasputin experienced a religious awakening that led him on pilgrimages and introduced him to various sects and mystical practices. His claims of possessing healing abilities and prophetic insights garnered attention, and his charismatic presence drew followers and patrons. By the early 1900s, Rasputin arrived in St. Petersburg, the heart of Russian power and culture. His reputation as a holy man and healer reached the ears of Tsarina Alexandra, who was desperate to find a remedy for her son Alexei's hemophilia, a hereditary condition that caused life-threatening bleeding. The Romanovs had kept Alexei's illness a closely guarded secret, adding to their isolation and vulnerability. In 1905, Rasputin was introduced to the royal family. Remarkably, he seemed to alleviate Alexei's suffering during severe episodes, though the means by which he did so remain a matter of speculation. Some suggest his calming presence reduced the boy's stress, which in turn lessened his symptoms. Others believe he used hypnotic techniques, or that his success was coincidental. Regardless, Rasputin quickly gained the trust and affection of the Tsarina, who believed he was divinely sent to save her son, and by extension, the dynasty. His influence over the royal family grew, much to the concern of nobles, clergy, and politicians. Rasputin's detractors viewed him as a manipulative charlatan whose proximity to the throne threatened the stability of the empire. Compounding the issue were rumors of Rasputin's debauched lifestyle. Accounts of his excessive drinking, womanizing, and attendance at questionable gatherings spread throughout society. Scandals involving allegations of inappropriate behavior with women, including nuns and society ladies, tarnished his image and, by association, that of the Tsar and Tsarina. During World War I, Tsar Nicholas II took command of the Russian forces at the front, leaving domestic affairs largely in the hands of Alexandra and, by extension, Rasputin. The Tsarina dismissed capable ministers based on Rasputin's counsel, replacing them with individuals who were often incompetent or corrupt. This led to administrative chaos, exacerbating wartime hardships and fueling public dissent. The situation became untenable for members of the aristocracy and political elite, who saw Rasputin as a malign influence undermining the monarchy. A group of nobles, including Prince Felix Yusupov and Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, conspired to eliminate him. On the night of December 29, 1916, they lured Rasputin to the Yusupov palace under the pretense of meeting Yusupov's wife. The details of Rasputin's assassination have become the stuff of legend. Allegedly, he was first poisoned with cyanide-laced cakes and wine, which seemed to have no effect. Panicked, the conspirators shot him multiple times, yet he reportedly continued to live. Ultimately, they bound him and threw him into the frozen Neva River, where he drowned. While some historians suggest the accounts were exaggerated to enhance the conspirators' bravado, the sensational nature of his death captivated the public imagination. Rasputin's demise did little to save the monarchy. In fact, it may have hastened its end by deepening the Tsarina's despair and further destabilizing the government. Just months later, the February Revolution of 1917 forced Tsar Nicholas II to abdicate, ending over 3 centuries of Romanov rule. The legacy of Rasputin is a complex interplay of myth and reality. To some, he represents the decay and moral corruption of the late imperial court. To others, he is a scapegoat for the failures of a regime already in decline. His life and death have been subject to countless interpretations in literature, film, and popular culture, often emphasizing the mysterious and sensational aspects of his story. As we leave the intrigue of the Russian court, our exploration continues to the sweeping plains of Mongolia, where a warrior would rise to forge the largest contiguous empire in history. Chapter 4. Genghis Khan. In the harsh and unforgiving landscapes of 12th century Mongolia, a child named Temujin was born under auspicious circumstances. The year was 1162 according to Mongolian tradition, and his birth would herald the rise of one of history's most formidable conquerors, Genghis Khan. His early life was fraught with adversity. His father, Yesugei, a tribal chieftain, was poisoned by rival Tatars when Temujin was just 9 years old, leaving his family vulnerable. Abandoned by their clan, Temujin, his mother Hörlun, and his siblings faced extreme hardship, surviving on wild fruits and hunting small game. This period of struggle forged Temujin's resilience and instilled in him a deep understanding of the complexities of tribal politics and the necessity of unity. As a young man, Temujin began to gather followers and forge alliances through a combination of charisma, strategic marriages, and military prowess. One of his most significant alliances was with his blood brother Jamuka, though their relationship would later deteriorate into rivalry. Temujin's vision extended beyond traditional tribal feuds. He sought to unite the Mongol tribes under a single banner. Through a series of battles and strategic maneuvers, Temujin overcame his adversaries, including the powerful Merkit, Naiman, and Tatar tribes. His adoption of meritocratic principles allowed talented individuals, regardless of their tribal origins, to rise within his ranks, fostering loyalty and efficiency. In 1206, at a grand assembly known as a Kurultai, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler, of the Mongols. With the Mongol tribes unified, Genghis Khan turned his ambitions outward. His first major target was the Xixia kingdom in northwestern China, which he subdued after a series of campaigns. He then set his sights on the Jin dynasty, which controlled northern China and had historically dominated the Mongols. The Mongol siege warfare evolved during these campaigns, incorporating Chinese engineers and technologies such as catapults and gunpowder. In 1218, an incident involving the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia ignited one of Genghis Khan's most devastating campaigns. A Mongol trade caravan was attacked, and its members were executed under the orders of the Khwarezmian Shah, Ala ad-Din Muhammad II. Genghis Khan sought redress, but the Shah's refusal and execution of Mongol envoys prompted a full-scale invasion. The Mongol army swept through Central Asia with unprecedented ferocity. Cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Urgench fell, their populations decimated. The Mongols employed psychological warfare, spreading terror to encourage surrenders. Those who resisted faced annihilation. This campaign not only avenged the insult, but also secured the Silk Road, facilitating trade and communication across Eurasia. Genghis Khan's military genius lay in his ability to adapt and innovate. His armies were organized into units of tens, hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands, allowing for flexible command and control. He emphasized discipline, intelligence gathering, and the integration of conquered peoples into his forces. The Mongols were adept at siege warfare, cavalry assaults, and feigned retreats, a tactic that lured enemies into traps. Beyond his military accomplishments, Genghis Khan implemented legal and administrative reforms. He established the Yasa, a code of law that promoted order and loyalty. Religious tolerance was a hallmark of his rule, allowing diverse faiths to coexist within his empire. He also promoted the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies across his vast domain. In 1227, Genghis Khan died during a campaign against the Tangut people of the Xia kingdom. The exact cause of his death remains uncertain, with theories ranging from injuries sustained in battle to illness. Before his death, he divided his empire among his sons, ensuring its continuation. His burial site remains a mystery, in accordance with Mongol customs designed to keep it secret. Genghis Khan's legacy is monumental. He transformed the Mongols from a collection of warring tribes into a unified force that reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the medieval world. His empire facilitated unprecedented cultural and economic exchanges between East and West. However, his conquests also brought widespread destruction and loss of life, with some estimates of casualties reaching into the tens of millions. Modern perspectives on Genghis Khan vary. In Mongolia, he is revered as a national hero and symbol of unity. Globally, he is recognized as one of history's greatest military leaders, albeit one whose methods were often ruthless. His impact on the development of nations, trade, and cultural interactions continues to be a subject of extensive study and debate. As we conclude our journey through the life of Genghis Khan, we turn to a more recent figure, whose ideology and actions led to some of the most profound tragedies of the 20th century. Chapter 5. Adolf Hitler. The early 20th century was a time of upheaval and transformation in Europe. Amidst this backdrop, Adolf Hitler rose from obscurity to become the dictator of Nazi Germany, orchestrating events that would lead to World War II and the Holocaust. Born on April 20, 1889, in Braunau am Inn, Austria-Hungary, Hitler was the fourth of 6 children. His father, Alois Hitler, was a customs official, and his relationship with young Adolf was strained, marked by strict discipline and frequent clashes. Hitler showed early interest in art and aspired to become a painter, but his application to the Academy of Fine Arts Vienna was rejected twice, leaving him embittered. Living in Vienna from 1908 to 1913, he struggled to make ends meet, developing a deep-seated resentment towards those he perceived as successful, including the city's Jewish population. His experiences during this period shaped his worldview, characterized by nationalism, anti-Semitism, and a belief in Germanic superiority. In 1913, Hitler moved to Munich, Germany. With the outbreak of World War I in 1914, he enlisted in the Bavarian army, serving as a dispatch runner on the Western Front. He was wounded twice and received the Iron Cross for bravery. The war's end in 1918, and Germany's subsequent defeat, deeply affected Hitler. He viewed the Treaty of Versailles as a humiliating injustice imposed by enemies and traitors, a sentiment that would fuel his political agenda. After the war, Hitler remained in the army and was assigned to infiltrate the German Workers' Party, DAP. Instead, he became enamored with its nationalist and anti-Semitic ideologies, joining and rapidly ascending its ranks. By 1920, the DAP had been rebranded as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, or Nazi Party. Hitler's oratory skills and charismatic leadership attracted a growing following. In 1923, emboldened by political instability and inspired by Benito Mussolini's march on Rome, Hitler attempted a coup known as the Beer Hall Putsch in Munich. The failed uprising led to his arrest and imprisonment, during which he dictated Mein Kampf, My Struggle, outlining his ideology and future plans for Germany. The book detailed his beliefs in Aryan supremacy, anti-Semitism, anti-communism, and the need for Lebensraum, living space, for the German people. Upon his release in 1924, Hitler restructured the Nazi Party to pursue power through legal means. The Great Depression, beginning in 1929, created economic despair and political fragmentation in Germany. Exploiting these conditions, Hitler promised revival, national unity, and the reversal of the Versailles Treaty. The Nazi Party's representation in the Reichstag grew significantly, and by 1933, President Paul von Hindenburg appointed Hitler as Chancellor. Once in power, Hitler moved swiftly to establish a totalitarian regime. The Reichstag fire in February 1933 provided a pretext to suppress opposition, leading to the Enabling Act, which granted Hitler dictatorial powers. He purged political rivals during the Night of the Long Knives in 1934 and consolidated his control over the military and government. The Nazi regime implemented policies based on racial purity and eugenics. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 institutionalized discrimination against Jews, stripping them of citizenship and civil rights. Propaganda, orchestrated by Joseph Goebbels, permeated society, promoting Nazi ideology and dehumanizing those deemed undesirable. Hitler's aggressive foreign policy aimed to overturn the post-World War I order. He remilitarized the Rhineland, annexed Austria in the Anschluss of 1938, and demanded the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. The Munich Agreement, a policy of appeasement by Britain and France, temporarily averted war but emboldened Hitler further. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, prompting Britain and France to declare war, marking the beginning of World War II. Hitler's military strategies, characterized by blitzkrieg, lightning war, led to rapid conquests across Europe. However, his decision to invade the Soviet Union in 1941 opened a protracted Eastern Front, stretching German resources thin. Central to Hitler's regime was the final solution, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of other victims, including Romani people, disabled individuals, Poles, Soviet civilians, homosexuals, and political dissidents. The establishment of ghettos, concentration camps, and extermination camps like Auschwitz became the machinery of the Holocaust. As the war turned against Germany, following key defeats at Stalingrad and in North Africa, Hitler's leadership became increasingly erratic. He refused to consider surrender, demanding total war and scorched earth policies. In 1944, an assassination attempt by German officers, known as the July 20th Plot, failed to remove him. By April 1945, with Soviet forces encircling Berlin, Hitler retreated to his Führerbunker. On April 30th, he married his longtime companion, Eva Braun. Facing imminent defeat, they both committed suicide the following day. Germany's unconditional surrender followed on May 8, 1945, ending the war in Europe. Hitler's legacy is one of unparalleled destruction and atrocity. His pursuit of ideological goals led to the deadliest conflict in human history, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 70 to 85 million people. The Holocaust stands as a stark testament to the consequences of hatred, prejudice, and totalitarianism. In the aftermath, the Nuremberg trials held surviving Nazi leaders accountable for war crimes and crimes against humanity, establishing legal precedents for international justice. The United Nations was formed with the aim of preventing future global conflicts, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted to promote human dignity and equality. As we reflect on the devastating impact of Hitler's actions, our exploration turns to another ruler whose reign was marked by oppression and the deaths of millions under a veil of ideological fervor. Chapter 6. Joseph Stalin. The early 20th century was a period of immense upheaval and transformation in Russia. Amidst the backdrop of revolution, civil war, and the birth of a new political ideology, one man would rise to absolute power, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the Soviet Union and the world. Joseph Stalin, born Ioseb Vissarionis Dzeugashvili in 1878 in the small town of Gori, Georgia, would become one of the most notorious figures of the 20th century. Stalin's early life was marked by hardship and adversity. The son of a cobbler and a washerwoman, he grew up in poverty. His father was abusive and struggled with alcoholism, while his mother was devoutly religious and hoped her son would become a priest. Stalin attended a seminary in Tbilisi, where he was first exposed to the writings of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. This exposure ignited his interest in revolutionary ideas, leading him to abandon his religious studies and join the Bolshevik faction of the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party. As a committed revolutionary, Stalin engaged in underground activities, including organizing strikes, spreading propaganda, and orchestrating bank robberies to fund the Bolshevik cause. He was arrested multiple times and exiled to Siberia, but he always managed to escape or secure his release. Stalin's dedication and ruthless efficiency caught the attention of Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks, who appointed him to key positions within the party. Following the success of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, Stalin rose rapidly through the ranks. He was appointed People's Commissar for Nationalities Affairs, where he dealt with the complex ethnic and regional issues within the vast Soviet territory. In 1922, he became the General Secretary of the Communist Party, a role that was initially administrative, but which he transformed into a powerful platform to consolidate his influence. Lenin's death in 1924 triggered a power struggle among the party's leadership. Stalin skillfully outmaneuvered his rivals, including Leon Trotsky, Grigori Zinoviev, and Lev Kamenev. He manipulated party politics, forged alliances, and utilized his control over party bureaucracy to marginalize and eventually eliminate his opponents. By the late 1920s, Stalin had established himself as the unchallenged leader of the Soviet Union. Stalin's vision for the USSR was one of rapid industrialization and collectivization. He sought to transform the agrarian society into an industrial superpower capable of competing with Western nations. In 1928, he launched the first of his 5-year plans, setting ambitious targets for heavy industry, steel production, and infrastructure development. While these plans did achieve significant industrial growth, they came at an enormous human cost. To fund industrialization, Stalin implemented the collectivization of agriculture, forcing millions of peasants to give up their land and join collective farms. This policy was met with widespread resistance, particularly from wealthier peasants known as kulaks. In response, Stalin initiated a brutal campaign to eliminate the kulaks as a class, resulting in mass arrests, executions, and deportations to labor camps known as gulags. The collectivization efforts led to a catastrophic famine between 1932 and 1933, most notably in Ukraine, a tragedy known as the Holodomor. Estimates of the death toll vary, but millions perished from starvation and related diseases. Stalin denied the severity of the famine and continued exporting grain to fund industrial projects, exacerbating the suffering of his people. Stalin's regime was characterized by an atmosphere of fear and paranoia. In the mid-1930s, he launched the Great Purge, a campaign of political repression aimed at consolidating his absolute control. He targeted perceived enemies within the Communist Party, the military, and the intelligentsia. Show trials were staged, where high-ranking officials were forced to confess to crimes they did not commit under torture or threat. The purges decimated the Red Army's leadership and led to the execution or imprisonment of millions. Despite the terror, Stalin's Soviet Union made significant advancements. The country became a major industrial power, and education and literacy rates improved. However, these achievements were overshadowed by the regime's brutality and the immense human suffering inflicted under Stalin's rule. As tensions grew in Europe with the rise of Adolf Hitler, Stalin sought to protect the USSR through diplomatic means. In 1939, he signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Nazi Germany, a non-aggression treaty that included secret protocols to divide Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. This agreement bought the Soviet Union time to build its defenses, but also facilitated the onset of World War II. In 1941, Germany violated the pact by launching Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The initial German advance was swift and devastating, catching the Red Army unprepared. Stalin was initially paralyzed by shock, but soon rallied his nation to resist the invaders. The Soviet Union endured tremendous hardships during the war, with millions of military and civilian casualties. Key battles, such as the Siege of Leningrad and the Battle of Stalingrad, became symbols of Soviet resilience. Under Stalin's leadership, the Red Army eventually turned the tide against Germany, pushing westward and capturing Berlin in 1945. The victory solidified the USSR's status as a superpower, but came at an enormous cost, with estimates of Soviet deaths ranging from 20 to 27 million. Following World War II, Stalin expanded Soviet influence over Eastern Europe, establishing communist governments in countries liberated by the Red Army. This expansion set the stage for the Cold War, a prolonged period of geopolitical tension between the Soviet Union and the United States. Stalin's policies during this time included strict control over the Eastern Bloc, suppression of dissent, and the development of nuclear weapons. Stalin's later years were marked by increasing paranoia and repressive policies. He initiated another series of purges, targeting Jews in what became known as the Doctors' Plot, accusing them of conspiring against him. However, his death on March 5, 1953, prevented the full execution of these plans. Officially, Stalin died of a cerebral hemorrhage, but there has been speculation about possible foul play. The legacy of Joseph Stalin is one of stark contradictions. On one hand, he transformed the Soviet Union into a global superpower and played a crucial role in defeating Nazi Germany. On the other hand, his regime was responsible for the deaths and suffering of millions of his own citizens through purges, forced collectivization, famine, and gulags. Stalin's cult of personality and totalitarian rule left a profound impact on Soviet society. In the years following his death, a process of de-Stalinization began under the leadership of Nikita Khrushchev, who denounced Stalin's excesses and cult of personality in a secret speech to the Communist Party. Monuments were dismantled, cities renamed, and policies reformed in an attempt to move away from the oppressive legacy. Stalin remains a controversial figure in Russia and around the world. Some view him as a strong leader who modernized the country and led it to victory in World War II, while others condemn him for the widespread atrocities committed under his rule. His impact on the 20th century is undeniable, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute power and ideological extremism. As we leave the shadow of Stalin's iron grip over the Soviet Union, our journey takes us to Southeast Asia, where another leader would impose a radical vision upon his country, resulting in one of the most devastating genocides of the modern era. Chapter 7. Pol Pot. In the dense jungles and rice fields of Cambodia, a dark chapter unfolded under the leadership of a man whose name would become synonymous with genocide and extreme totalitarianism. Pol Pot, born Saloth Tsar in 1925 in the small village of Prek Spauf, led the Khmer Rouge in a brutal attempt to transform Cambodian society. His radical ideology and ruthless methods resulted in the deaths of an estimated 2 million people, about a quarter of the country's population. Saloth Tsar was born into a relatively well-off family. His father was a successful farmer with connections to the royal family. In 1949, he received a scholarship to study in Paris, where he became involved with communist groups and was introduced to Marxist-Leninist ideology. During his time in France, he adopted the pseudonym Pol Pot, a name he would later use as the leader of the Khmer Rouge. Returning to Cambodia in the early 1950s, Pol Pot became a teacher, but soon immersed himself in revolutionary activities. He joined the clandestine Communist Party of Kampuchea and began organizing peasants and workers against the French colonial government and later the US-backed regime of Prince Norodom Sihanouk. The political landscape in Cambodia was tumultuous, with conflicts spilling over from the Vietnam War and internal power struggles. In 1970, a coup led by General Lon Nol overthrew Sihanouk, establishing the Khmer Republic. This event intensified the civil war, with Sihanouk aligning himself with the Khmer Rouge against Lon Nol's government. Pol Pot emerged as the leader of the Khmer Rouge, directing guerrilla warfare from the countryside. The movement gained support by capitalizing on anti-imperialist sentiment and promises of equality and prosperity. By 1975, the Khmer Rouge had grown strong enough to capture the capital city, Phnom Penh, effectively seizing control of the country. Upon taking power, Pol Pot declared the establishment of democratic Kampuchea and initiated a radical transformation of Cambodian society. He sought to eliminate all traces of capitalism, Western influence, and traditional culture. The Khmer Rouge envisioned an agrarian utopia based on Maoist principles, with absolute equality and communal living. One of the regime's first actions was the forced evacuation of cities. In Phnom Penh alone, over 2 million people were compelled to march into the countryside with little notice, carrying only what they could hold. Hospitals were emptied and patients were left to die. The urban population, including professionals, intellectuals, and skilled workers, were labeled as new people and viewed with suspicion. The Khmer Rouge abolished money, private property, religion, and traditional family structures. Education and healthcare systems were dismantled. The entire population was forced into collective farms and labor camps, where they worked long hours under brutal conditions. Food shortages were rampant, leading to widespread starvation and disease. Pol Pot's regime targeted anyone perceived as a threat to the new order. This included former government officials, monks, teachers, doctors, and even those who simply wore glasses, a sign of intellectualism. Ethnic minorities such as Vietnamese and Cham Muslims faced severe persecution. The infamous S21 prison in Phnom Penh, formerly a high school, became a site of torture and execution for thousands. Children were separated from their parents and indoctrinated with Khmer Rouge ideology. They were often used as informants, turning against their own families. The regime encouraged a culture of fear and mistrust, ensuring obedience through the constant threat of violence. The genocide orchestrated by Pol Pot decimated the Cambodian population. Mass graves, known as the killing fields, dotted the landscape. The regime's paranoia led to purges within its own ranks, further contributing to the death toll. Despite the devastation, the outside world was slow to react, partly due to Cambodia's isolation and the geopolitical complexities of the Cold War. In 1978, tensions between Cambodia and Vietnam escalated. Border clashes and the persecution of ethnic Vietnamese in Cambodia prompted Vietnam to invade. The Vietnamese forces quickly overran the Khmer Rouge, capturing Phnom Penh in January 1979 and effectively ending Pol Pot's rule. Pol Pot and remnants of the Khmer Rouge retreated to the jungles along the Thai border, where they waged a guerrilla war against the new Vietnamese-backed government. Despite being ousted from power, the Khmer Rouge retained Cambodia's seat at the United Nations for several years, complicating international efforts to address the humanitarian crisis. Pol Pot remained a fugitive for nearly 2 decades. In 1997, internal conflict within the Khmer Rouge led to his arrest by his own followers. He was subjected to a show trial and sentenced to house arrest. In 1998, Pol Pot died, reportedly from heart failure, though some speculate he may have been poisoned or committed suicide to avoid extradition. The legacy of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge is one of profound tragedy. The physical and psychological scars inflicted upon the Cambodian people are deep and enduring. The loss of a generation of intellectuals and professionals hindered the country's development for decades. Landmines scattered across the countryside continued to maim and kill long after the regime's fall. In the years following, efforts were made to bring justice to the victims. The extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, a hybrid tribunal supported by the United Nations, was established to prosecute senior leaders of the Khmer Rouge. While some were convicted, Pol Pot himself never faced trial. Cambodia's journey towards healing and reconciliation has been challenging. Education about the atrocities was suppressed for years due to political sensitivities. Only recently have initiatives been undertaken to teach younger generations about this dark period, emphasizing the importance of remembrance and the prevention of future genocides. Pol Pot's rule serves as a stark reminder of the destructive potential of extremist ideologies and absolute power. His attempt to engineer a radical societal transformation resulted not in utopia, but in unimaginable suffering and loss. The Cambodian genocide stands as one of the most devastating human tragedies of the 20th century. As we leave the haunting echoes of the killing fields, our exploration leads us back in time to the tumultuous era of 16th century Russia, where a Tsar's reign of terror would lay the foundations for autocratic rule in his country. Chapter 8. Ivan the Terrible. In the annals of Russian history, few figures are as notorious as Ivan IV Vasilievich, better known as Ivan the Terrible. Born on August 25, 1530, in Kolomenskoye near Moscow, he would become the first ruler to assume the title of Tsar of all the Russias. His reign, which lasted from 1547 until his death in 1584, was marked by significant territorial expansion, centralization of power, and a reign of terror that left a lasting imprint on Russia's national psyche. Ivan's early life was fraught with turmoil and tragedy. His father, Grand Prince Vasily III, died when Ivan was just 3 years old. His mother, Elena Glinskaya, acted as regent, but died under suspicious circumstances when Ivan was 8, likely poisoned by rival boyar, noble factions vying for control. Orphaned and vulnerable, young Ivan was subjected to neglect and witnessed the brutal power struggles among the nobility. These formative years instilled in Ivan a deep-seated mistrust of the boyars and a yearning for absolute authority to bring order to the chaos he experienced. In 1547, at the age of 16, he was crowned Tsar, a title derived from Caesar, signifying his ambition to be the supreme ruler, not merely a grand prince among nobles. The early part of Ivan's reign, often referred to as the Good Period, was characterized by progressive reforms and modernization efforts. He convened the Zemsky Sobor, an early form of a parliamentary assembly, and implemented a new legal code, the Sudebnik of 1550, which aimed to curb corruption and standardize laws across the realm. He reorganized the military, creating the Streltsy, a professional standing army equipped with firearms. Ivan's most significant territorial expansions occurred during this period. He conquered the Khanates of Kazan in 1552 and Astrakhan in 1556, effectively extending Russian control over the Volga River and opening access to the Caspian Sea. These victories diminished the threat of Tatar raids and facilitated trade and colonization eastward. However, the tide of Ivan's reign turned following personal tragedies and political setbacks. The death of his beloved first wife, Anastasia Romanovna, in 1560 deeply affected him. Ivan suspected the boyars of poisoning her, fueling his paranoia and animosity towards the nobility. Concurrently, military failures in the Livonian War, 1558 to 1583, aimed at securing access to the Baltic Sea, compounded his frustrations. In 1565, Ivan implemented the Oprichnina, a policy that divided Russia into two distinct territories. One part remained under the traditional administration, while the other, the Oprichnina, was under Ivan's direct control. He established the Oprichniki, a personal guard dressed in black and mounted on black horses, who acted as his enforcers. They wielded sweeping powers to suppress dissent and eliminate anyone perceived as a threat. The Oprichniki unleashed a reign of terror across the land. They conducted mass executions, confiscated property, and instilled fear among the populace. The city of Novgorod, suspected of harboring treasonous sentiments, was particularly targeted. In 1570, Ivan led a brutal campaign against Novgorod, resulting in the massacre of thousands of its inhabitants and the destruction of the city's wealth and infrastructure. Ivan's actions during the Oprichnina devastated the Russian economy and destabilized society. Agriculture suffered as peasants fled oppressive conditions, leading to widespread famine and depopulation of regions. The terror eroded the traditional structures of governance, concentrating power solely in the hands of the Tsar. Ivan's personal life was tumultuous and marred by violence. In a fit of rage in 1581, he struck and killed his eldest son and heir, Ivan Ivanovich, during an argument over the treatment of the Tsar's pregnant daughter-in-law. This act of filicide devastated Ivan and left the succession in jeopardy, as his remaining son, Feodor I, was perceived as weak and ineffective. Ivan's health deteriorated in his later years, possibly due to syphilis or mercury poisoning from the medicines he consumed. He became increasingly erratic, engaging in occult practices and surrounding himself with astrologers and soothsayers. Despite his declining state, he continued to wield absolute power until his death on March 28, 1584. The legacy of Ivan the Terrible is complex. He is credited with centralizing the Russian state, expanding its territory, and laying the groundwork for the autocratic Tsardom that would characterize Russia for centuries. His establishment of a centralized bureaucracy and standing army modernized the nation and enhanced its stature among European powers. However, his reign of terror inflicted immense suffering on his subjects and crippled the economy. The Oprichnina's legacy was one of fear, repression, and the breakdown of social order. The population decline and economic hardships that resulted from his policies hindered Russia's development. Ivan's psychological profile has been the subject of much analysis. Some historians suggest that his actions were the result of mental illness exacerbated by personal losses and the pressures of rule. His use of terror as a tool of governance set a precedent for future rulers, embedding a culture of autocracy and suppression of dissent in Russian politics. Culturally, Ivan was a patron of the arts and architecture. He commissioned the construction of St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, an iconic symbol of Russia known for its colorful domes and intricate design. The cathedral was built to commemorate his victory over Kazan and remains a testament to his impact on Russian heritage. Ivan the Terrible's life has been depicted in various works of literature, music, and film, often highlighting the duality of his character, a ruler capable of both visionary leadership and extreme cruelty. His story serves as a reflection on the corrupting influence of absolute power and the devastating consequences of tyranny. As we depart from the shadow of Ivan's turbulent reign, our journey moves eastward to China, where a revolutionary leader's quest to reshape his nation would lead to profound transformations and upheavals. Chapter 9: Mao Zedong. China, a nation with a rich tapestry of history and culture, underwent monumental changes in the 20th century. Central to this transformation was Mao Zedong, a revolutionary leader whose vision and policies would dramatically alter the lives of millions. Born on December 26, 1893, in Shaoshan, Hunan Province, Mao rose from humble beginnings to become the founding father of the People's Republic of China. Mao was the son of a prosperous peasant farmer. His early education exposed him to traditional Chinese literature, but he was also influenced by Western ideas during his studies. In 1911, he joined the revolution against the Qing dynasty, marking his entry into political activism. Mao continued his education in Changsha, where he became involved with various political movements and was introduced to Marxist theory. In 1921, Mao became one of the founding members of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. He believed that the peasants, rather than the urban proletariat, were the key to revolution in China. This perspective set him apart from other communist leaders and shaped his strategies. Mao's organizational skills and ideological contributions elevated his status within the party. The 1920s and 1930s were tumultuous for China, marked by internal strife and the struggle against Japanese invasion. The CCP formed an uneasy alliance with the Nationalist Party, Kuomintang or KMT, led by Chiang Kai-shek to resist foreign aggression. However, the alliance fractured, leading to a brutal civil war. In 1934, facing defeat by KMT forces, Mao led the Red Army on the Long March, a grueling retreat over 6,000 miles to the remote northwestern province of Shanxi. The journey was perilous with harsh terrain, extreme weather, and constant attacks. Of the approximately 80,000 who began the march, only about 8,000 survived. Despite the losses, the Long March became a symbol of communist resilience and solidified Mao's leadership. During World War II, the CCP and KMT formed another temporary alliance against Japanese occupation. Mao used this period to strengthen the Red Army and expand communist influence, particularly in rural areas. Following Japan's defeat in 1945, the Civil War resumed. The CCP, bolstered by popular support among peasants and strategic military successes, eventually emerged victorious. On October 1, 1949, Mao proclaimed the establishment of the People's Republic of China from Tiananmen Square in Beijing. This moment marked the culmination of decades of struggle and the beginning of a new era. Mao aimed to transform China into a socialist society, drawing inspiration from the Soviet model, but adapted to Chinese conditions. Mao's initial policies focused on land reform, redistributing land from landlords to peasants. While this gained support among the rural population, it also involved violent class struggle and the execution of landowners deemed exploitative. Mao sought to eliminate feudal remnants and consolidate communist control. In 1958, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, an ambitious campaign to rapidly industrialize and collectivize agriculture. The plan encouraged the establishment of people's communes and backyard furnaces for steel production. However, unrealistic production targets, poor planning, and the disruption of agricultural practices led to disastrous consequences. The Great Leap Forward resulted in one of the deadliest famines in history. Estimates of the death toll vary widely, but it is believed that between 15 and 45 million people perished from starvation and related causes. Mao's refusal to acknowledge the crisis and adjust policies exacerbated the suffering. Facing criticism within the party for the failure of the Great Leap Forward, Mao temporarily stepped back from frontline leadership. However, he remained influential and continued to shape ideology. In 1966, concerned about what he perceived as a drift towards revisionism and capitalist tendencies, Mao initiated the Cultural Revolution. The Cultural Revolution was a radical movement aimed at purging counter-revolutionary elements and reinforcing communist ideology. Mao mobilized the youth, particularly the Red Guards, to challenge authority figures, attack the Four Olds, old customs, culture, habits, and ideas, and promote his cult of personality. Educational institutions were closed, and intellectuals, artists, and officials were persecuted. The decade-long turmoil resulted in widespread chaos, violence, and the destruction of cultural heritage. Millions were subjected to public humiliation, imprisonment, torture, and death. The social fabric of China was torn apart as families and communities were pitted against each other. Mao's foreign policy during this period included both confrontations and rapprochements. Relations with the Soviet Union deteriorated, leading to border clashes. Conversely, in 1972, Mao hosted US President Richard Nixon in a historic visit that opened the door to improved Sino-American relations. Mao's health declined in the early 1970s, but he remained a central figure until his death on September 9, 1976. His passing marked the end of an era, and the power struggle that ensued led to the arrest of the Gang of Four, who were blamed for the excesses of the Cultural Revolution. The legacy of Mao Zedong is deeply contested. On one hand, he is credited with unifying China, ending a century of foreign domination and civil strife, and laying the foundations for its emergence as a global power. His emphasis on self-reliance and mass mobilization inspired revolutionary movements worldwide. On the other hand, Mao's policies resulted in the deaths of tens of millions of people and inflicted profound trauma on Chinese society. The economic disruption, cultural destruction, and human rights abuses during his rule had lasting impacts. The Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution are considered catastrophic failures by many historians and economists. In contemporary China, Mao is officially revered as a national hero and founding father, though his mistakes are acknowledged. His image remains prominent in Tiananmen Square and on the country's currency. The Chinese Communist Party maintains a careful balance in presenting his legacy, emphasizing achievements while downplaying the darker aspects. Mao's influence extends beyond China. His writings and strategies have been studied by revolutionaries and political leaders around the world. The Little Red Book, a collection of his quotations, became a symbol of communist ideology and was widely distributed during the Cultural Revolution. Mao Zedong's life and leadership embody the complexities of revolutionary change. His ambition to reshape society led to profound transformations, but also immense suffering. The lessons from his era continue to inform debates on governance, development, and human rights. As we conclude our examination of Mao's impact on China and the world, our journey turns to the heart of Africa, where the ambitions of a European monarch resulted in exploitation and atrocities on an unimaginable scale. Chapter 10. Leopold II of Belgium. In the age of imperialism, European powers scrambled to claim territories across the globe, often with little regard for the indigenous populations. Among these colonial pursuits, King Leopold II of Belgium stands out for his ruthless exploitation of the Congo Free State, a vast territory in Central Africa that became his personal possession. Born on April 9, 1835, in Brussels, Leopold ascended to the throne in 1865 and reigned until his death in 1909. Leopold harbored grand ambitions for Belgium to become a colonial power. Frustrated by his government's lack of interest in overseas expansion, he took it upon himself to acquire a colony. He initially explored opportunities in Asia and the Americas, but ultimately focused on Africa, where European presence was relatively limited. Capitalizing on the explorations of Henry Morton Stanley, an Anglo-American journalist and explorer who navigated the Congo River basin, Leopold saw an opportunity. He commissioned Stanley to establish a chain of trading stations along the river, ostensibly to promote trade and civilization. To legitimize his claims, Leopold convened the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, where European powers formalized the partition of Africa. Through diplomatic maneuvering, Leopold secured international recognition of the Congo Free State as his personal fiefdom, separate from the Belgian government. He portrayed his intentions as humanitarian, pledging to suppress the slave trade, promote free trade, and bring Christianity and civilization to the region. In reality, Leopold's administration in the Congo was driven by greed and exploitation. The region was rich in natural resources, particularly ivory and rubber. The demand for rubber skyrocketed with the advent of bicycles and automobiles, making it a highly profitable commodity. Leopold established a brutal regime to extract these resources, using forced labor and terror to meet production quotas. The administration imposed quotas on villages, requiring them to collect specific amounts of rubber and ivory. Failure to meet these demands resulted in severe punishments, including beatings, mutilations, and executions. The Force Publique, a private army composed of Belgian officers and Congolese conscripts, enforced these policies with extreme brutality. One of the most horrifying practices was the severing of hands. Soldiers were instructed to cut off the hands of those who resisted or failed to produce enough rubber. This gruesome method served both as punishment and as a means to account for expended ammunition, ensuring that bullets were not wasted. The exploitation led to a catastrophic decline in the population due to overwork, disease, famine, and violence. Estimates of the death toll vary, but it is believed that the population of the Congo Free State plummeted from around 20 million to 10 million people during Leopold's rule. Reports of the atrocities began to surface through missionaries, travelers, and former employees who witnessed the conditions firsthand. Key figures, such as British diplomat Roger Casement and American missionary William Henry Shepherd, documented the abuses and brought international attention to the crisis. In 1904, the Congo Reform Association was founded by Edmund Dean Morel and Casement, spearheading a global campaign against Leopold's regime. Their efforts garnered support from prominent individuals, including Mark Twain, who wrote a scathing satire titled King Leopold's Soliloquy, and Arthur Conan Doyle, author of The Crime of the Congo. Under mounting international pressure and scrutiny, the Belgian government conducted an investigation into the Congo's administration. The resulting report confirmed the widespread abuses. In 1908, the Belgian parliament annexed the Congo Free State, bringing it under governmental control and renaming it the Belgian Congo. Leopold II never publicly acknowledged or apologized for the atrocities committed under his rule. He received substantial financial compensation from the Belgian government for relinquishing control, and he continued to amass personal wealth until his death. The legacy of Leopold II is one of greed, cruelty, and exploitation. His actions in the Congo Free State represent one of the most egregious examples of colonial abuse in history. The impact on the Congolese people was devastating, with lasting effects on the region's demographics, culture, and development. The Belgian Congo continued under colonial rule until 1960, when it gained independence as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. However, the country's post-independence history has been marked by political instability, conflict, and external interference, challenges that can be traced back to the legacies of colonial exploitation. In recent years, there has been a growing movement to reassess Leopold's legacy. Statues of the king have been vandalized or removed, and debates have arisen about how to address this dark chapter of history. Belgium has begun to confront its colonial past, with calls for formal apologies and reparations. Leopold II's story serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of imperialism and the atrocities that can occur when unchecked power and greed converge. It highlights the importance of historical accountability and the need to acknowledge and address past injustices to foster healing and reconciliation. The exploration of these 10 infamous historical figures reveals the profound impact that individuals can have on the course of human events. Their actions, driven by ambition, ideology, or the pursuit of power, led to immense suffering and shaped the destinies of nations and peoples. From the steppes of Central Asia to the jungles of Africa, their legacies serve as cautionary tales about the dangers of absolute authority, unchecked aggression, and the devaluation of human life. By delving into their stories, we confront uncomfortable truths about the complexities of history and the capacity for both greatness and cruelty within humanity. These narratives underscore the importance of vigilance, empathy, and the defense of human rights. They remind us that the past is not just a record of what has been, but a guide for what could be, a call to learn from history to build a more just and compassionate future. Thank you for joining us on this in-depth journey through the lives of history's most infamous villains. Your engagement and reflection are vital in keeping the lessons of the past alive. We invite you to share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. If you found this documentary insightful, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more explorations into the rich tapestry of human history.